Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Time to take the gloves off, okay? Time to call a spade a spade. What are we going to do about the few people who still refuse to get vaccinated and, as a consequence, prolong the pandemic? Because they are. In fact, in North America, it is now being called the pandemic of the unvaccinated. In California, they have done a thorough study. 93% of all new cases of COVID in California in the last few days have been unvaccinated people. In Ontario, it is about 86% of all new cases, totally unvaccinated people. And by the way, it's very interesting because increasingly, the age group responsible for refusing to get vaccinated is from 20 to 39. I'm not suggesting that people in other age groups are not refusing as well, but by and large, this is the worst offenders. These are the worst offenders, 20 to 39. And in other words, and a lot of, I don't know if some of you people have really thought about this. The only reason we still have outbreaks of COVID, the only reason we still cannot fully open and get back to normal is because a very small percentage of us refuse to get vaccinated. As I say, the latest figures are, in California, 93% of all new cases unvaccinated. In Ontario, about 86%. All new cases in the past 2 weeks, unvaccinated people. Fact is, and think of this, folks, okay? We are now faced with a pandemic that is fully preventable. Think about that. This is now a disease that is fully preventable and should be preventable and should be prevented. We have enough vaccines in both the United States and in Canada to vaccinate every single living person, including children. Very clearly, the only reason that we still are in lockdown or semi-lockdown, that we cannot return to normal, that we still, even though the numbers around here are declining, we still have outbreaks of COVID, is because a few people, very few, a declining number, thank goodness, refuse to get vaccinated. We still have people stubborn. I mean, anybody with a brain or a conscience, for that matter, knows they have a duty, they have a responsibility, not only to themselves, to their family, their loved ones, their friends, but they have a responsibility to their community, to their neighbors, and to their country to get vaccinated. This, I repeat, is a disease that is fully preventable. One of the problems, and scientists are pointing this out, is that in order for COVID to continue, it's got to have bodies in which it can live. It cannot live, very clearly, in fully, or very rarely will there still be a problem. But in at least 90% of the cases of those people who are fully vaccinated, the COVID virus cannot live. If everybody, think of this, if everybody in this country were to be vaccinated, the disease, the virus, would be virtually wiped out. We wouldn't have any problems. We wouldn't have to have lockdowns. We could all return to normal lives. We wouldn't have to have masks. We wouldn't have to have 50% in restaurants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We wouldn't have all the terrible cost of still treating people in hospitals for this disease. I repeat, and I will repeat again and again and again. This is now a disease that is fully preventable. And only those few stubborn, ignorant people who refuse to get vaccinated are preventing this. They are prolonging the pandemic. They are costing us lives because people are still dying, and they are costing us millions, nay, billions of dollars in lost business. Because a few people refuse to be vaccinated. And we all have to pay the price. My question here, what do we have to do? I mean, the evidence is there. It's all around us. Almost 26,000 deaths in this country so far from COVID. Around the world, it's in the tens of millions dying and still dying. And in fact, in some cases, as you know, the outbreaks are reoccurring. Even in Britain, where there's a large number of people vaccinated, because they still have people in Britain and including the United States and Canada, who refuse to be vaccinated. And as a consequence, the virus continues to live. Not only to live, and the scientists are pointing this out, not only does the virus live in these unvaccinated people, but it mutates. It's got to be in a human body to mutate. It cannot mutate out in the air or on a counter someplace. It mutates in a human body. And the human bodies in which it mutates are the unvaccinated human bodies. How much more graphic can I be? How much more graphic can the evidence be? So the question is, and this is now a community problem. It's not just a problem of individuals. Because a few of us refuse to get vaccinated, it is impeding the entire country. It is slowing the entire economy. It is still costing us lives. People are still being hospitalized with it. It still continues to exist. I repeat, if we were all vaccinated, COVID would be virtually wiped out in this country. We wouldn't have to, as I say, wear masks, etc., etc. So, what do we do? In your opinion, do we have to make it mandatory? I mean, I know a lot of people object to this, and I certainly have my doubts, but the fact is that we make vaccination mandatory for our children with very, very rare exceptions. There's got to be very, very good evidence that the child cannot be vaccinated. Otherwise, they're not allowed into a classroom. So we decide for children that vaccination is mandatory, and as a consequence, we have virtually wiped out most childhood diseases, including polio, by the way. So what do we do with those few people who are impeding, damaging, harming, placing all of us at danger? You and I, even though we have been fully vaccinated, you and I are still at danger here because about 10% of those people fully vaccinated can still come down with COVID. Now, I grant you the disease will not be as serious. It is unlikely, if you have been fully vaccinated, that you will require hospitalization. But nonetheless, why should I or anyone else who has taken the time, the effort, and cared enough, and listened to their conscience, got 2 shots, why should we be at risk to becoming ill at any sort, of any degree, because a few people around us refuse? Why should I be 10% at risk? Don't forget, I mean, 10% sounds like it. But if you're in a group of 100 people, let's say you're at a concert, there's 10 people there. 10 people are susceptible, even though they have been fully vaccinated, if there's someone in their midst who is not vaccinated. So what do we do? Do we have to make it compulsory? In Quebec, apparently they're bribing people, and in some states in the United States, they're bribing people. But I mean, do we have to do that? I mean, this, as I say, folks, this is a community problem. If you have people in your community, in your area, who are unvaccinated, they are placing you, your family, your community, and the country at risk. They are prolonging the pandemic. I repeat once again, the COVID-19 virus is a fully preventable disease in North America. We have some texts coming in, John. Let's hear what people have to say.
Yes, we do, and we invite your phone calls, of course, at 613-413-2217. And a reminder, the all-new Blast the Radio app is there for you to listen live, watch live, and catch the podcast as well. Look for Blast the Radio, all one word, wherever you download apps. All right, text rolling in. Bob says, Lowell, very right. Once again, well said. Mike says, does this mean the 50,000 cases in the UK every day are people who have not been vaccinated? Numbers going up in every state. There you go. Absolutely. It is being called the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Go ahead, John. James says he fears September in round 4 of this. Greg says put them all in jail. That's his solution. Put them all in jail.
Lori says, all I fear from these young people is, or all I hear from young people is my body, my choice. Hope they don't get sick too late then. I just want to give their heads a shake. And Karen says, I think it should be mandatory. We do have an email, Lowell at blasttheradio.com. Lowell, this group of folks from the woke group clearly have not woken up yet. The sheer audacity of them. There's still problems in long-term care. People with disabilities haven't seen improvements, nor the homeless in their situations, and it's being dragged out by the ignorant who claim to be aware. They are idiots, says Lisa.
You know, one of the things that is not widely known, you know, I keep hearing this all the time. Well, you know, if you've been fully vaccinated, what does it matter to you if I'm not? Here's one of the problems. I've already talked about the 10% who are still vulnerable, okay? But the most vulnerable people in our midst, and I'm thinking primarily of cancer patients who are having chemotherapy, they can't get vaccines. They are fully susceptible. So I just want to tell you this, all of you people out there who are cursing at me right now, I just want you to remind you this, that there are people out there who, through no fault of their own, cannot be vaccinated. If you're being treated for cancer, chemotherapy, et cetera, you can't be vaccinated. Your immune system is already very, very low. If you are unvaccinated, you are placing those people at risk of death. Damn you. You know, I mean, to refuse to be vaccinated in light of all of the evidence we have is an act of pure and utter selfishness. You don't give a damn about people around you. To me, you're the same as the guy who's out on the Queensway speeding at 150 and cutting back and forth. He's having fun. He doesn't give a damn flying foxfart about anybody else. Well, if you don't have a vaccine, you're exactly the same. You are placing innocent people at risk of death and more sickness. You are prolonging the pandemic. This is a fully preventable damn disease. More texts. Yes, John.
Yep, and again, the number 613-413-2217. A text to that number says, the only thing you can do to the unvaccinated is refuse them entrance to establishments / work and travel. Mike says 20% of people in the state still think the vaccines have a microchip in them. Peter says, get vaxxed. If you don't get the virus, someone by you may and end up dead. Known people who have had it, all ages, some died, some survived. Take 20 minutes and get it. And Greg says, I wonder if Randy Hillier got the shot.
I'd still like to know, what do you think we have to do? Are you prepared to go so far as to say, listen, in light of the issue here of public safety, we must make it compulsory? I mean, if we're talking about public safety, one of the reasons we have speeding laws is because we realize that speeding places the public at risk. So we say, no, we put speed laws in effect. Smoking laws have been instituted because we realized that secondhand smoke places other people at risk. The reason that we arrest people who have been drinking and driving is because we realize don't forget, it's your choice to speed. If you want to speed, that's your choice. And people keep saying, well, it's my choice. Yeah, it's your choice to speed. But if you're speeding to the point where you're putting the public at risk, then we'll throw you in jail. Ditto if you decide that you're going to go out and drink and drive. You know, that's your choice. You have a choice. You can go out and drink and drive. But if we catch you, we'll throw you in jail. So, this idea, well, it's my choice. But the fact of the matter is, if you're refusing to get vaccinated, you are placing other people at risk of sickness and, in some cases, death. So do we have to make it mandatory? I am reluctant to say that, but I'm going to tell you something. If this continues, because, as I say, this is a fully preventable. I don't know if you've thought of that. It just really struck me in the middle of the night. I'm thinking, you know what? We now have enough vaccines to treat everybody in this country, and we have the means to do it very quickly. We are begging people to get vaccinated. In Toronto, they've had to cancel 2 or 3 of the pop-up clinics because they just couldn't get people to go there. Meantime, we still have the pandemic prolongs. What are we going to do? What's your idea here? How far should we go? And is there anything we can do to alleviate the concerns? I mean, some of these concerns with people may be legitimate. I think in most cases they're not legitimate. It's just they're too damn lazy or too damn selfish to take a little bit of time out to look to take care of their community. More text. Yes, John.
Hazel says selfish, ignorant people should be mandatory. At least they should have to admit if they've not been vaccinated. Tamara says make it mandatory. Mandatory to be in public, mandatory in stores. Our kids cannot be vaccinated yet either, she adds. Anne says it doesn't help when you have MPs and MPPs and a select group of doctors going around the country spouting anti-vax and anti-government control. And Cheryl says, Lowell, just out of curiosity, are you running for Parliament?
No.
Don't know what that has to do with it, but
you know what? I am so controversial. So many people hate me. I couldn't run for dog catcher and win. Let's be honest, okay?
You and me both.
We live in a society today where you got to kiss a lot of asses in order to get elected. You cannot, you cannot state your feelings on things. You just can't and get elected. It's just simply that way now. These days. Yes. All right, you're right, I'm rambling here, but it makes me laugh when people say, are you going to run? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. Shields. I'm hearing from people who say, Lowell, we took your advice. We'd never heard of Shields before. We gave them a call, or we ordered on website. Some people even dropped in, and by God, the people are very, very pleased. They found a very good deal, and the selection is really outstanding. And as I pointed out before, boy, if you want to see a very professionally run and done website, check out shields.ca. You'll have, if you can hardly use the internet, which is me, you will have no problem, believe me, with Shields. Just go to shields.ca. You can click on whatever it is you're interested in. Mattresses, furniture, appliances. And if you click on appliance, you'll see all the different kinds you want. Electric, whatever it is, they're all there. The prices, the sizes, pictures of them, and the prices and the amount of money that you're going to save. Folks, at least, I've always said this, you know what? This is a local company, family run since 1947. They're good people. At least give them a chance. Don't just, pick up a phone and phone a box store and have to wait for God knows how much and send your money to China. At least give them a chance. Shields.ca. John, we got, what have we got here?
Can I just say, your admission of your lack of ability to use the internet, if that's not an endorsement for how great their website is, I don't know what is. So, well done on that. Lindsay,
you know what? I have trouble negotiating through. It just frustrates the hell out of me. Maybe it's my age. Maybe it's the fact that I grew up with typewriters. But
listen,
but I'm going to tell you,
people don't know this. When we worked together in the Bell Media building, the last time I saw you, you were still sitting at your desk with a damn typewriter. That's the last. Oh, yeah. So the fact that you have a computer at all amazes and impresses me.
Let me tell you about typewriter. Just to break away, I had a serious program here. But,
I'm sorry.
You know what? I'm going to tell a story, and his name escapes me right now. I'll think of it in a minute here. I do have another topic. We're running a little short of time. But if you have more thoughts as to whether we've got to make this mandatory,
we've got a few.
Has anything I've said here rung a bell with any of you out there? As I say, it only really dawned on me early in the morning. I do some of my best thinking around 3 a.m., believe it or not. And it just struck me, you know what? Because we have plenty of vaccines now in both the United States and Canada to vaccinate everybody, that means that this is now a fully preventable disease. If everybody got vaccinated, the disease would be wiped out. The disease can't exist if it doesn't have welcoming bodies. John, you have some more texts there?
Yes, and I apologize. I kind of steered you down a different path there for a second.
No, it's all right.
And says if we don't make it mandatory, then we have segregation, vaccinated versus non-vaccinated.
Excuse me, I'm not quite sure what that means. It is a segregation. And already those of us who have been vaccinated have proof of that. So we already have documentation. So I'm not quite sure what that. I've heard this before, but I'm not quite sure what that means. The fact of the matter is, you're either vaccinated or you are not. It's simple as that. You go ahead, John. Sorry.
I'm wondering if she means segregation similar to when we had smoking and non-smoking sections in restaurants. I don't know. Nancy says, I got my first shot, and the leukemia scientist said my white blood cells were off the chart. I had to go to the hospital for more blood tests, and my doctor says definitely get the second shot. So I went to the pharmacy, and they have the vaccine that's not the same as the first vaccine I got, so I'm waiting for the same vaccine to come around so I'm not mixing them.
Well, at the very least, she's getting good for you. You're my hero. Anybody that, particularly, the people who are really my heroes, those people who are really reluctant, are afraid, they don't like needles, et cetera, but decide that they have a public responsibility. You're my hero. You're my hero. It's easy if you don't care. If the needle doesn't bother me, doesn't bother Debbie, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not heroes. We're just doing what we know we should be doing. But some people out there have a real tough time and decide. And I have heard from some of them that they're really afraid of this, but they realize they had a responsibility to themselves, to their family, to the country, etc. And they did it. They're my hero. You're my hero.
I'm one of those. I'm one of those. I was never big on the flu shot.
Well, you're not my hero. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I know. I'm well aware of that. But this was different. I mean,
just kidding.
You know what?
Kidding.
We've got to kennel our cat before we go to New Brunswick this summer. He needs to be vaccinated before I can put him in a kennel, for crying out loud.
Yeah, if you're going to take him to the United States, he's got to be vaccinated too.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
a good point. Lori says Trudeau is separating younger seniors and older seniors. Ray is encouraging you to run for Governor General, but of course recognizes you do not speak French. We're all over the place today.
Right.
Anne says it means that if you're not vaccinated, then you are going to be excluded from many social interactions. So get vaccinated. There's her follow-up.
Yeah, that's certainly true, and we're seeing that already. But there's a deeper responsibility. Just as you have a responsibility to, if you see somebody that you can help on the street, they've fallen, you have a responsibility to do whatever you can. You have a responsibility to drive safely. You have a responsibility not to smoke so that it affects other people. You have a responsibility not to drink and drive. And I could go on and on and on. These are public responsibilities. If we are going to have a civil society, if we're going to live in a society that isn't totally controlled by dictatorial law, then we have to cooperate. There are certain, in some cases, almost unspoken rules that a civil society must have in order to be orderly. Yes, more texts.
Yep, and again, the phone number, because we love some calls, 613-413-2217. Tom asks, if vaccines work, why are those that have it so scared?
What does he mean?
If you have the vaccine, I have the vaccine, why are we scared?
I've already gone through this. Apparently, he doesn't listen too well. The fact of the matter is, even though that I have been double dosed, there's still a 10% chance that I can still contract COVID. Okay, but the both Pfizer and Moderna are about 90% effective. Well, that means that they're about 10% not. Now, I admit that if I do contract after the two vaccines, I probably won't get very sick. I probably won't require hospitalization. But why should I spend 2 or 3 days in bed with like the flu because some jackass decided not to get vaccinated? Screw you. I mean, come on. Why should I risk? And you may say, well, it's only 10%. Yeah, you got 100 people. Well, 10 people in that 100 people are vulnerable. So if there's one person in that 100 who hasn't been vaccinated, okay, then you're placing 10 people in that 100 at risk. Why do you have a right to do that? That's my question. John, more texts?
Yeah, frankly, I don't want COVID in any way, shape, or form.
Precisely.
At home, in the hospital, it sounds like hell on earth. I know 6 people who've lost their lives to COVID-19. I don't want to risk it.
I told this before. We lost a dear friend.
I know you did.
But I lay for one night in the emergency ward at the Queensway Carlton next to a woman with COVID.
Yeah.
Who was gasping for air.
I remember you saying that.
It was a terrible experience. I don't know what happened to her. At that point, the hospital, all the rooms were absolutely filled. They were bringing in COVID patients from Toronto. You remember, that's not that long ago,
Nope.
How serious it was. So I have spent, as I say, a night next to a woman gasping for air, gasping to live. So don't talk to me about how dangerous this is. Don't you ever talk to me about that. Yes, more texts, John.
I mean, the vaccine does not make you immune. It minimizes the effects. Mike says, at the beginning of the pandemic, all these anti-vaxxers were saying, this is an experimental drug, I'm going to wait. After 2 years, they still have their excuses. And a text at 613-413-2217 kind of speaks to that. They say, what I've heard from a few people I know is they want to wait to see if there are any side effects. They don't trust the vaccine yet, to which I said, millions have had it already and are fine. One of them is 65, the other a family of 5. Like I said before on this show, the government and media need to educate further.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be more education. We know some of the myths that are out there. They were actually microchipping you. This is all a government plot. COVID is not real. We've heard it all. We hear it all time and time again. But I mean, this has been going on too long now. We are now almost 8 months. We've been vaccinated in this country for about 8 months now. Millions of people, about 25 million people in this country have already been vaccinated. As far as we know, the number of adverse reactions are so small that you can't really detect any adverse, serious I'm talking about. And as far as we know, there has not been a single death from the vaccines, despite all of the stories, etc. So stop the excuses. It works. I mean, the mere fact that we have been able to cut COVID so drastically in such a short time in the city of Ottawa should be all the evidence you need. It works. Well, I mean, what proof do you need, for God's sake?
Well, because they'll come back and they'll say, well, it works in the short term, but we don't know what the effects are going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now, except for the fact that we do, because COVID infections have been... SARS was a COVID. This is COVID-19. This is a variant on that. They have had these vaccines for a long time. And just like the flu mutates every single year and they adapt the vaccine to that, this is mutated, and they've adapted the vaccine to that. The only thing that was rushed was its approval to the front of the line instead of waiting its turn according to when it was filed.
I don't believe people anymore. I think they're just making excuses.
I think too.
For the most part, the people who refuse to get vaccinated, these are people who just don't care about anybody else. As I say, these are the jackasses that you see out there zipping back and forth in traffic and risking lives and so forth. Those are, as far as I'm concerned, that's the kind of person they are. Centennial Glass. Now, good people. This is very important. I don't think this is stressed enough in advertisements that we hear. Because in the end, it really depends upon the kind of people you're dealing with. You can be offered all of the deals and so forth, but if you're dealing with people who aren't very nice, who aren't very honest, then you may end up with a lot of trouble. But I'm going to tell you this. Centennial Glass are good people. I know them. I've worked with them. I've talked with them. I've met with them. I've talked about them for many, many years. They're good people. They do good work. The prices are very reasonable. They're very large. They handle a lot of major deals, hotels, restaurants, etc. But they really love to work in homes. Windows, doors. Do you know what? One of the things that they're doing now is building some greenhouses, which I find really attractive. CentennialGlass.ca. More texts coming in, John.
Yeah, just a couple. Todd says, I've been vaccinated twice, still waiting for the chip to be activated.
Good for you.
Tara says, we have a responsibility to our children. Glenn says, the anti-vaxxers are now preventing herd immunity. Now they are in charge of something, but by definition, they are in the community that will get COVID.
Well, yeah, it's the unvaccinated who are now prolonging this. Yeah. If everybody was vaccinated, we would be essentially back to normal. If everybody in this country was vaccinated, as they should be, then we would have wiped out. The pandemic wouldn't be there. The number of cases would be probably non-existent, just like polio. Okay, it would be wiped out. I repeat, and I cannot stress this enough. This is a fully preventable disease. Get your COVID shot, get your vaccination, and you help to prevent the disease, which means that you help to get us back to normal. If you don't, then you delay getting back to normal, you prolong the whole damn agony. Get your vaccination. It's a public responsibility, not only for you, your neighbor, your city, your community, and your country. John, we're pretty well out of texts here.
We've got one more, and I know you're going to fight him on it, but here comes Tom, who says, so the science is settled then, right? You mean like it is about climate change?
There's no similarity. The science is settled when it comes to vaccines. The evidence is there. We may be lacking some evidence concerning global warming, but we sure as hell aren't lacking any evidence as it applies to vaccine. I mean, you know what? Who wrote that? Tom?
That was Tom.
Tom, read a newspaper. Listen to a newscast one time. Get your nose out of Netflix, all the crapola, okay? Stop watching pornography on the internet and just, read a news story and find out what's going on. Do yourself a favor. Do your community a favor. Do your damn country a favor. Get educated. Thank you all. We'll be back.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the